mastering has definitely been demystified for me just by me asking the questions that I wasn't sure about. I'm so on board with getting stuff mastered by somebody else now because I'm too deep in it as a mixing engineer to have any objectivity at the end of the day.
Oh, I agree completely. Just to have somebody else put some kind of EQ.
Yeah, even if they don't change anything.
Exactly.
As long as they've heard it and they can sign off like, this sounds good. This is an okay mix, like you did it. Yeah, check.
Check. You win. But yeah.
Nice. Do you work with consistent mastering engine, like one consistent mastering engineer or several? Depends on the client.
Oh, man, I don't. And partially, I have a lot of friends that are really great, and then I have a lot of people that come to me that have people they love. But I mean, I love everything Greg Calby has done for me. Pretty much everybody at Sterling. I mean, if one of my clients says we're going to go to Sterling, I'm like, cool, that's fine. That sounds good to me. There's a guy in Australia named Lachlan Carrick I really like. A friend of mine here in LA, Ian Sefcik, is really good. He's an old Capital guy. And actually my production partner, Corey Britz, he actually he's crushing it as well. So I send a lot of stuff to him now as well. But yeah, I kind of I don't want to sound unloyal, but I send stuff all over the place.
Great.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel bad because I feel like every mixer that I think is, really talented, they have an answer to that question, and I don't. But I don't know. I feel like I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to just use one person, and this is my mastering engineer friend, and he does my work, or she does my work.
It's interesting because different mixing engineers have different, approaches. Like Jesse Ray, Ernster was I don't want the mastering engineer to change the way it feels dynamically. And there are some guys who are totally down with it changing, letting the mastering engineer do what they do. So it's super interesting, everybody's got a different feel. I feel like, I don't know, there were times where I was probably more precious about how the song sounded coming back from mastering. And I feel like I'm less so now because I kind of can give the guy or gal the benefit of the doubt that they, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, here's, kind of on top of what you said, the one of the things that made me want to start actually limiting things myself is sometimes it would come back from somebody and I didn't like how they got it loud. And then I listened to the reference that I was sending to people and I'm like, I know I'm a dB or two below you, but there's way more punch here. And so that's kind of, like I said, one of my reasons for wanting to get things loud and giving it to them, because I want everybody really love the mix the way it is, and that kind of goes back to what Jesse was saying. We don't want it to come back significantly different from a transient perspective just because you made it -6 LUFS. Also, why did you make it -6 LUFS? Why did you do that to my mix?
Totally. Well, I think the secret is what you said already, and that's that a loud mix can be a loud master. And when you're making your mix loud, you have control over all of those aspects, the dynamics, the frequency balance, all that stuff in the mixing stage, so that it's already pretty, where it needs to be.
Yeah.
You're partway there, if you will. I want to ask you a little bit about your podcast, because you've got a podcast called Progressions.
I do.
Success in the music industry. I'm curious how that started, what, inspired you to get going, and yeah. Let's start with that, I guess.
So my podcast, I started like most people during the pandemic. I feel like, it became a running joke of people starting podcasts during the pandemic. But it's rooted in the idea that I wanted to share with people the things that I think have changed my life over the last 4 or 5 years. And they're the way that I approach my career and my life. The best way to describe it is that I spent 10 to 12 years of my life trying to fit into the recording engineer mold of success and basically comparing myself to this thing that existed. And when you're comparing yourself to somebody else's path of success or some other, version of success that's been taught to you in a college or on a blog or whatever, the only thing you're going to do is set yourself up for failure, right? So-and-so was 22 and he got his first Grammy and I just graduated college, so I'm going to get a Grammy this year. And when I don't, I'm a failure, that kind of thing. And so I kind of redefined what success was for myself, kind of in the way that I just wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to have balance over my time. And, maybe I'm not going to have any more number ones. Maybe I'm not going to actually win a Grammy. I'm just going to be forever nominated for one album and those things were frustrating. When you have moments of success, like, I've worked on records that went to number one. I've had platinum record. Like, I've had moments of success, and then it's not necessarily followed by the greatest career. Like, most people listening to this podcast don't know who I am, and that would probably bother me 5 years ago, and I don't care now. So it's, coming to terms with all of that and understanding that taking hold of your life is way more important than fitting into somebody else's shoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. That's kind of the place that the podcast is coming from. It's, so basically the show it's interviews with people like this. The interview, it goes wherever it goes. I mean, I bring on guests that I think are compelling, that have an interesting story, that have, I think that hopefully a lot of them have hit a moment where they had to make a big decision. And sometimes I can get that out of them and share that thing with my audience, but I'm also not going to pry somebody into that uncomfortable moment. If all we do is talk about, whatever wiring, that's fine. And then the intro to the podcast is kind of the thing that roots it in my, like I said, my journey. So there's a moment where I talk about, whether it's a productivity thing or a mindset thing, fighting the scarcity mindset or understanding your time. So there's 5 or 6 minutes of me kind of trying to share some of the things that I think are helpful, not in an arrogant way. Hopefully nobody thinks I'm arrogant, but I'm just I'm way happier now than I was 5 years ago. I think these are things that will help you. And then I hang out with somebody for an hour and that's that. So
yeah, I love your intros.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
They're super awesome. And I wish I could take the time to kind of do crazy intros on my show. But
I have to write one as soon as we get off of here. So if you have any ideas, let me know.
I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but yeah, no, it's an awesome podcast. I've checked it out. I've listened to a few episodes, and they're all excellent. I would say start with Matt Boudreau's episode. That was an amazing episode.
Matt's is really great. I mean, I hate to pick favorites in case anybody listens, but there's 5 to 10 that really stand out to me as being exactly what I want the show to be. And I've only done 51 interviews in my life.
That's a ton of interviews.
Yeah, but
that's about when I started getting good at interviewing people. I would say
I feel like I just got good, or good enough, So yeah. I'm excited for the second year, which will be coming up very shortly here. So yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested in that kind of journey, or you feel like you're fighting a wall that you can't get past, or whatever it is,
nice.
Give it a listen, because that's why I'm putting it out there, is to help people that maybe are on. Thinking about making some decisions that could have a way bigger positive benefit in their life. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've already talked about a ton of lessons that could be that, leaning into your fear, that kind of stuff.
Those are all,
this episode.
Yeah. All kind of,
those are the moments, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you if there was anything mind-blowing that you learned either about the music industry or about yourself just from doing the podcast.
Yeah, I feel like that was you just set that up for me. I don't know when this will air, but I'm 2 weeks away from 52 episodes. And so the way that this started is that I committed to myself that I would do 1 episode a week for a year. And so I'm coming up on that 1 year mark in 2 weeks. And the way that I feel is is epic. Because the last 2 episodes are done. I'm finishing episode 51, and 52 is just me talking. So that's just me writing. So all the guests are booked. Everything is, in the bag. I know 52 episodes are going to happen. And I feel like I can do anything, because it's I hit that, I hit that milestone, and it's so energizing to be shit, I said I was going to do this, and I had people tell me that I wasn't, and I still did it. What do I want to do next? So the thing that I learned the most, spoiler alert, from the episode 52, where I'm going to talk about what I learned doing a podcast for a year, is I learned that if you commit to yourself and you're willing to hold yourself accountable, that you can crush it. And do I have the biggest podcast in the world? No, but I know the people that listen to it enjoy it. And I know that I am super stoked that I did it for a year and I feel great. And so that's like, for anybody that's like not putting their record out, or anybody that's like, you know, whatever it is that you're not doing, like just take a little time to try to commit to it. Because when you do one of those, you hit one of those milestones, like you just feel like invincible for a second. I'm hoping it'll last longer than a second, but
yeah,
who knows? So that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me. I mean, obviously, there's been amazing guests, and there's a lot of great conversations, but the thing that I took away the most is that. So
yeah, it's like a project that you started from the ground up, and you reached your goal.
Yeah,
and I think that's an amazing lesson also for the listeners of this podcast of like, you know, if you haven't released that song, like you said,
just put it out.
Yeah, I feel like so many artists that I've worked with, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, and then they never do it, and you could usually tell when it's going to be a person that's not actually going to do it. Yeah. Usually it's because they're too precious about their art. And so they never ship. And that is the biggest mistake, because it's never going to be a masterpiece until you've put one foot in front of the other enough times that you're able to make a masterpiece. Nobody hits a home run the first time they get up to bat. So
yeah. Well, you probably
almost nobody does.
Yeah. Well, you probably
definitely not me.
You probably feel the same way that I feel about like podcast interviews. Like my first few, I mean, were cringeworthy. Like when I think about them, or like how long it would take me to like write an intro, and it's like every time, like I'm more accepting of the way that I speak. Like I used to edit myself, like in the podcast, so much. Right?
I edit myself like nothing compared to the guests.
Right, the guest, I take the ums out and I shorten the space, and like if they repeat themselves and I can remove it, I remove it. But me, it's like, I mean, I've dropped in. I don't know. Have you ever punched in on yourself to like fix a line?
I think twice.
Okay. Yeah, I've done it like 2 or 3 times. But like, I guess people, just like once you start.
Secrets of the trade, people.
Exactly. Yeah. Once you start doing something, like every time you do something, it gets easier and easier and easier. It's the scary first time. Like I said in the beginning, like, the scary shit is the shit you're supposed to do. Hopefully I can swear on your show because it just.
Yes, you can.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely. Biggies.
So just do the hard stuff, and the hard stuff gets easier every time. I mean, that's it.
Love it, man. Well, everyone's got to go check out your podcast progressions. I'll put a link, obviously, in the show notes. And podcasters hanging out with podcasters, for lack of a better term. I'd love to get into the sauce segment before we wrap.
You sent
me a track by Corey Britz, who is your former production partner, right?
Current production partner.
Oh, current production partner.
When production happens, Corey and I do it.
Sweet. Well, you guys did a song called Running from a Ghost, and we'll have a listen to it for about 90 seconds, and we'll talk a little bit about what went into it. Sound cool?
Let's do it.
Travis, sounds awesome.
Thanks.
It's almost like the 70s, like, you know, funk met the 80s, met like a house track or something.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty good description. There's like, there's a later in the song, there's a very